A cop stopped him on the highway, and every minute could mean life or death for the stranger waiting behind him. Malik Carter thought he was making the biggest mistake of his life. Standing under the brutal Georgia sun with only a few dollars left in his pocket and medicine for his little sister in his backpack, he made a choice nobody else was willing to make. While dozens of drivers sped past a stranded old man on the side of the highway, Malik turned around and offered help. What happened next would shock an entire city, because the exhausted stranger sitting beside that broken Cadillac wasn't just any old man. And before the next sunrise, the poor black teenager everyone overlooked would discover that one act of kindness could unlock a future he never thought possible. The heat had settled over the outskirts of Atlanta like a heavy blanket. By late afternoon, the air above the highway shimmered in waves, turning the road into a ribbon of silver light. Dust drifted across the shoulder every time a truck thundered by, and the cicadas screamed from the trees with the kind of persistence that made silence feel impossible. 17-year-old Malik Carter adjusted the strap of his worn backpack and kept walking. His black work shirt clung to his back with sweat. The smell of fried food still lingered on his clothes after a long shift at the diner. His feet ached. His stomach growled. But none of that mattered as much as what was inside his backpack. A small paper bag from the pharmacy. Inside it was an inhaler refill for his little sister, Ava. Malik glanced down at the bag for the 10th time in the last mile. The medicine had cost nearly every dollar he had left after helping his mother cover rent that month. Ava needed it. That was enough. He pushed forward along the shoulder of the road. Cars rushed past without slowing. Luxury SUVs, pickup trucks, delivery vans. People headed home to air-conditioned houses and family dinners. Nobody noticed the skinny black teenager walking alone beneath the blazing Georgia sun. Malik was used to that. Most days he felt invisible. The world noticed people with money, people with influence, people with power. Not boys from South Atlanta carrying pharmacy bags and wearing shoes held together by glue. A horn blasted somewhere behind him. A truck roared past. Dust exploded into the air. Malik turned his face away and coughed. When the dust settled, he saw something up ahead. A car, parked awkwardly on the side of the highway. Its hood was raised. One of the doors hung open. At first he didn't think much about it. Broken-down cars weren't unusual. Then he noticed the man. An elderly white man sat halfway out of the driver's seat. His back rested against the doorframe. His head was tilted forward. One arm hung limply beside him. For a moment, Malik thought the man might be sleeping. Then another truck blasted past. The old man didn't react. Malik slowed. Something felt wrong. He looked around. Cars continued streaming by. Nobody stopped. Nobody even slowed down. The old man remained motionless. Malik hesitated. Home was still nearly an hour away on foot. His mother would be expecting him. Ava needed her medicine. The last thing he needed was trouble. He started walking again. 3 steps. 4. 5. Then he stopped. His mother's voice surfaced in his memory. "Don't let the world make you hard, baby, no matter what it does to you." He closed his eyes briefly, then turned around. The old man was still there. Malik sighed softly. "Guess I'm stopping." He crossed the gravel shoulder and approached the vehicle. It was an older Cadillac, nice enough to cost more than anything his family had ever owned. The paint was dusty. One tire looked nearly flat. The engine compartment sat open under the sun. As Malik got closer, he could see the man's face. Pale, flushed red from the heat. Sweat soaked through his button-down shirt. His lips looked dry and cracked. "Sir," no response. Malik stepped closer. "Sir, you okay?" The man's eyes opened slowly. Confused, unfocused. For a second he seemed surprised that anyone was standing there at all. Oh, his voice was weak. Hello. Malik crouched beside him. You don't look too good. The old man managed a tired smile. I've had better afternoons. His breathing sounded strained. Not dangerous, but not normal either. Malik glanced at the empty road. How long you been sitting out here? The old man looked toward the highway. Honestly? He swallowed. I've lost track. Another car sped past. Neither of them bothered to wave. The driver wouldn't have stopped anyway. Maybe an hour. The old man wiped sweat from his forehead. Maybe longer. Malik stared. An hour? In this heat? Nobody stopped? The old man laughed softly. The sound held no bitterness, only disappointment. A lot of people looked. His eyes drifted toward the road. Nobody stopped. Something tightened inside Malik's chest. The old man looked tired. Not the kind of tired that came from missing sleep. The kind that came from realizing how little people cared. Malik knew that feeling. He lived with it. What happened? Malik asked. Car died. The old man nodded toward the engine. Ran out of gas. He patted his pocket. My phone died too. He shook his head. Didn't bring a charger. Malik looked around. The nearest exit was nowhere in sight. The highway stretched endlessly in both directions. Any gas station nearby? The old man nodded. 3 miles south. 3 miles. Malik stared down the road. 3 miles. 6 miles round trip. In this heat. The old man followed his gaze. Then he smiled sadly. Exactly. The silence lingered. Malik looked at the man's hands. They were trembling slightly. His breathing remained shallow. One leg was stretched awkwardly in front of him. Only then did Malik notice the brace around the man's knee. You hurt? Knee replacement. The old man tapped the brace. 3 months ago. He attempted another smile. Walking 6 miles isn't exactly in the doctor's recommendations. Malik couldn't help smiling. Then he looked back toward the road. Nobody was stopping. Nobody cared. A wave of frustration rolled through him. How many people had passed this man? 20? 30? 50? All it would have taken was one person. One. The old man reached for the car door. I'm sure somebody will stop eventually. He sounded like a man trying to convince himself. Malik opened his backpack. He pulled out the only bottle of water he had. The plastic felt warm from the heat. Still, it was water. He held it out. Drink. The old man blinked. No. Sir, you need it. Malik unscrewed the cap and pressed it into the man's hand. You need it more. The old man's eyes softened. For a moment he looked as if he might argue again. Instead, he took the bottle. His hands shook. He drank slowly. When he finished, he stared at the nearly empty bottle. Thank you. Malik shrugged. No problem. The old man looked at him carefully now, really looked, as though seeing him for the first time. What is your name, son? Malik. Malik. The man nodded. I'm Charles. Malik sat on the gravel beside him. The heat pressed down around them. The highway hummed. Somewhere overhead, a hawk circled lazily through the bright sky. You from around here? Charles asked. South Atlanta. Charles nodded. Long walk. Malik laughed softly. Yeah. Charles looked at the pharmacy bag sticking out of the backpack. You heading home? Trying to. The old man noticed the pharmacy label. Medicine? My little sister. Something changed in Charles's expression. A quiet understanding. She okay? Asthma. Malik stared down at the road. She will be now. Charles followed his gaze. Neither man spoke for a moment. The sun continued burning overhead. Then Charles shook his head. You should go home. Malik looked at him. What? You've already done enough. Charles held up the empty water bottle. This was kind. He smiled. But your family needs you. Malik stared at him. Then he looked south, toward the gas station. 3 miles, then back toward home. His mother, his sister. Dinner, a shower, a chance to rest before another shift tomorrow. Every sensible thought in his head told him to leave. The old man seemed to know it. You don't owe me anything. Malik looked at the brace on Charles's knee, the trembling hands, the exhausted eyes. Then he looked at the endless line of cars rushing by. Nobody stopping. Nobody caring. A memory surfaced. Ava sitting in a hospital room years ago. Scared. Struggling to breathe. His mother crying quietly beside the bed. Strangers had helped them that day. People who didn't owe them anything. People who could have walked away. But didn't. Malik stood. Charles looked confused. What are you doing? Malik adjusted his backpack. The pharmacy bag rustled inside. Then he pointed south. 3 miles, right? Charles stared. Malik. Stay here. The old man's expression shifted. Slowly. Disbelief, no. You can't. Watch me. Charles shook his head. You don't know me. Malik smiled. You need gas. The old man opened his mouth. Malik cut him off. I got 2 legs. He shrugged. That's enough. For a second, Charles simply stared at him. The highway roared behind them. Dust drifted across the shoulder. The old man's eyes glistened unexpectedly. Not from the heat, from something else. Something deeper. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. Before he could respond, Malik turned toward the road, toward the blazing stretch of highway disappearing into the distance, toward 3 miles of burning pavement, toward a decision that would change everything. Neither of them knew it yet. Not Malik. Not Charles. Not even the hundreds of strangers racing past them without a second glance. But before the next sunrise, the boy everyone overlooked would find himself standing at the doorway of a future he had never dared imagine. And the old man sitting beside the broken Cadillac was far more important than he appeared. Malik took his first step toward the gas station. Then another, and another. Behind him, Charles Bennett watched the teenager disappear into the shimmering heat. Unable to shake the feeling that he had just met someone extraordinary. The image stayed with him long after Malik vanished down the highway. A skinny 17-year-old carrying the weight of a world that clearly hadn't been kind to him, yet somehow still willing to help a stranger. Charles leaned back against the Cadillac and stared toward the road. He had lived long enough to recognize character when he saw it, and there had been something different in that boy's eyes. Something rare. Something most people lost long before adulthood. The sound of traffic faded beneath the pounding heat. Meanwhile, nearly 24 hours earlier, Malik Carter had woken up to the familiar sound of sirens echoing somewhere beyond the apartment complex. South Atlanta never truly slept. Not the part of town where Malik lived. The hallway lights flickered constantly. The elevators broke twice a month. The paint peeled from the walls in long strips that nobody bothered fixing. And every family on the 3rd floor seemed to be carrying some burden too heavy for them to hold. Malik opened his eyes before sunrise. The small bedroom was barely large enough for the mattress on the floor. A box fan rattled in the corner. Warm air pushed through the room. Across from him, taped carefully to the wall, hung 3 college acceptance letters: Georgia State, Kennesaw State, Clark Atlanta University. Every morning he looked at them. Every morning he reminded himself why he wasn't there. Then he got up and went to work. Because dreams didn't pay rent. His mother did her best. But Denise Carter hadn't been the same since the injury. 5 years earlier she had worked as a nursing assistant. Long shifts, hard work, honest money. Then one patient slipped. Denise tried to catch him. The damage to her back never healed correctly. Doctors called it permanent. Employers called it a liability. And bills kept arriving anyway. Malik sat up and checked the time. 5:30. Another long day. He pulled on his clothes quietly. The apartment remained mostly dark. Only the kitchen light glowed beneath the doorway. His mother was already awake. She was always awake before everyone else. Malik found her sitting at the tiny kitchen table. A cup of coffee rested between both hands. The apartment smelled faintly of toast. Outside the window, dawn painted the sky gray-blue. "You should be sleeping," Malik said. Denise smiled. "So should you." Malik opened the refrigerator. Not much inside. Milk, bread, a few eggs, some leftovers. Enough to survive another week if they stretched everything carefully. He grabbed a piece of toast. Denise watched him. The same way she always did. Like she was trying to memorize him. "You got another double shift today?" Malik nodded. "Diner until 2. Then the warehouse?" "Yeah." She sighed quietly. "You work too much." Malik laughed. "We both know somebody has to." Denise looked down at her coffee. That hurt. He instantly regretted it. "Mom." "No." She shook her head. "It's okay." But it wasn't. They both knew it. The silence sat heavily between them. Then another door opened. Ava appeared. 10 years old. Wild curls, oversized pajamas, sleepy eyes. She carried her inhaler like most kids carried toys. "Morning." Malik smiled immediately. His entire face changed around his little sister. "Morning, Peanut." Ava grinned. "You bringing home pie from the diner?" "Maybe." "You said maybe yesterday." "I know. You said maybe the day before, too." Malik laughed. "You negotiating with me?" "Absolutely." Denise rolled her eyes. "She's learning from you." Ava climbed into the chair beside her brother. For a moment, everything felt normal, almost peaceful. Then the mail slot clanged. 3 envelopes landed on the floor. Nobody moved. Nobody needed to. They already knew. Bills. Always bills. Eventually, Denise stood and collected them. Her expression changed immediately. Not fear, not surprise. Exhaustion. The kind that builds year after year. One envelope was marked "Final Notice." Another carried the apartment management logo. Malik looked away. He already knew what they said. Rent overdue. Utilities overdue. Payment required. The same story every month. The same battle. The same impossible math. Ava noticed the tension. Children always did, even when adults tried hiding it. She quietly reached over and squeezed her mother's hand. Denise forced a smile. "I'm okay, baby." But Malik saw the tears threatening behind her eyes, and something inside him tightened. The world had spent years taking from his mother. Her health, her career, her security, yet she still smiled, still prayed, still believed tomorrow could be better. Sometimes Malik wished he believed that too. By 6:30, he was walking toward the diner. The city was waking up around him. Buses groaned through intersections. Street vendors unlocked carts. Workers hurried toward jobs. The morning smelled like coffee, gasoline, and summer humidity. The diner sat near a busy intersection, a place where businessmen, construction workers, nurses, and truck drivers all passed through. Malik pushed through the back entrance. Immediately, the kitchen heat hit him. Grease, steam, the clatter of dishes, the sound of orders being shouted. His manager, Rick Holloway, stood near the register. Rick noticed Malik instantly. "You're 2 minutes late." Malik checked the clock. 6:58. His shift started at 7. Rick didn't care. "You planning on making something of yourself, Carter?" Malik remained silent. Experience had taught him that arguing only made things worse. Rick smirked. "Didn't think so." Then he walked away. The words shouldn't have bothered him, but they did. Because Rick always found new ways to say the same thing. Know your place. People like you don't get ahead. People like you stay in the kitchen. Stay invisible. Stay grateful. Malik tied on an apron and got to work. The next 7 hours disappeared into dirty plates and hot water. Customers came and went. The lunch rush exploded. Orders stacked endlessly. By noon, his back hurt. By 1, his hands were raw. But he kept moving, because stopping wasn't an option. Around 1:30, an elderly woman struggled through the front door, carrying too many grocery bags. Nobody moved. Nobody noticed. Except Malik. He stepped away from the dish station, held the door, carried her bags to a booth. The woman smiled warmly. "Thank you, sweetheart. No problem." Rick saw the interaction. Later, he pulled Malik aside. "You got time to help customers now?" Malik frowned. "She needed help, not your job." Malik looked toward the woman, then back at Rick. Something inside him wanted to argue. Instead, he simply nodded. "Yes, sir." Rick walked away satisfied. But one of the waitresses, Mrs. Jenkins, had witnessed everything. She approached quietly, slipped a slice of apple pie into a container. "Your sister still likes pie?" Malik smiled. "More than oxygen." Mrs. Jenkins winked. "Take it home." For the first time all day, he smiled. Because despite everything, there were still good people in the world. People who noticed. People who cared. People like Mrs. Jenkins. People like his mother. And maybe, people like the old man sitting beside a broken Cadillac on the side of the highway. At 2 o'clock, Malik clocked out, then immediately headed toward his second job. Because kindness was free, but survival wasn't. And by the time the next afternoon arrived, fate would place him on a lonely highway beside a stranded stranger. A stranger whose life was about to become tangled with his own forever. But before that moment arrived, there were still ordinary hours to survive. The warehouse sat behind a row of aging industrial buildings on the south side of the city. From the outside, it looked forgotten. Faded paint, rust along the loading docks. Broken pavement cracked by years of Georgia summers. Inside, the air smelled like cardboard, dust, and diesel fuel. Malik spent most afternoons unloading deliveries, stacking boxes, and moving inventory from one side of the building to the other. The work wasn't complicated, just exhausting. By 3 o'clock, sweat had soaked through his shirt for the second time that day. By 4, his shoulders burned. By 5, every muscle in his back felt tight. Still, he kept moving, because every hour meant a little more money. Every dollar meant one less thing his mother had to worry about. When his shift finally ended, the sun was beginning its slow descent toward the horizon. The golden light stretched across the parking lot. Most workers hurried toward their cars. Malik started walking toward the bus stop. Then he spotted Mrs. Rodriguez. The elderly woman lived in his apartment building. She stood beside a shopping cart filled with groceries. One of the wheels had broken. The cart leaned sideways. A bag of oranges had spilled onto the sidewalk. Several people walked past her. Nobody stopped. Malik sighed softly, then headed in her direction. "Need a hand?" Mrs. Rodriguez looked up. Relief immediately filled her face. "Oh, thank heaven." Within minutes, Malik had gathered the groceries and carried them the 6 blocks back to the apartment complex. "You didn't have to do that," she told him. "I know. You're a good young man." Malik smiled. His mother always said kindness wasn't something you talked about. It was something you practiced. Even when nobody noticed. Especially then. By the time he reached his apartment, dusk had settled over South Atlanta. Children played basketball in the parking lot. A distant siren echoed somewhere beyond the neighborhood. Music drifted from an open window. Life continued, the same as always. Malik climbed the stairs and stepped inside. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. His stomach tightened immediately. "Mom?" No answer. He walked farther inside, then found her. Denise sat alone at the kitchen table. Several envelopes lay spread out before her. Bills. The sight instantly told him everything. She was staring at them without moving, without blinking, like she hoped they might somehow change if she waited long enough. "Mom?" Denise quickly wiped her eyes. Too late. Malik had already seen. "I'm fine." He hated those words. People only said them when they weren't. He pulled out a chair and sat beside her. Neither spoke for a moment. The kitchen light buzzed softly overhead. Finally, Malik looked down at the paperwork. Past due. Final notice. Late fee. Disconnect warning. The words blurred together into one familiar threat. Money. Or else. Denise folded the papers. "It's nothing. It isn't nothing. We'll figure it out." Malik already knew what that meant. It meant she was scared, and trying not to let him see it. The same way she'd done since he was little, the same way mothers everywhere did. A door opened down the hallway. Ava appeared carrying a coloring book. The moment she saw their faces, she stopped. Children always knew. Maybe not the details, but they knew when something hurt. "You guys okay?" Denise smiled instantly. A mother's smile. The strongest kind. "We're fine, baby." Ava studied her carefully, then climbed into her mother's lap. "You look sad." Denise kissed the top of her head. "I'm just tired." That answer seemed acceptable. For now. Ava leaned against her shoulder. The apartment fell quiet again. Eventually, Denise looked at Malik. "You remember what I used to tell you?" He smiled. "Depends." The important one. Malik already knew. He had heard it his entire life, even during the hardest years, especially during the hardest years. Denise reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Don't let the world make you hard." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "It tries." "I know. It'll disappoint you." She nodded toward the bills. "The world can be unfair." Malik looked away. Because unfair didn't begin to describe it. He had watched his mother lose everything she'd worked for. Watched job applications get ignored. Watched landlords threaten eviction. Watched good people struggle while selfish people seemed to succeed. Sometimes bitterness felt easier. Sometimes anger felt deserved. Denise seemed to read his thoughts. She always could. "Listen to me." Malik looked back. Don't let pain decide who you become. The room felt very still. Outside, laughter drifted up from the basketball court. Inside, only the hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. Denise smiled softly. Promise me. Malik swallowed. I promise. She nodded, satisfied, as if she'd handed him something valuable, something far more important than money. Later that evening, Malik took out the trash. On his way back inside, he noticed a young boy sitting alone on the curb, maybe 8 years old. Tears streaked his face. Malik recognized him immediately. Terrence, a kid from the building next door. What happened? The boy pointed toward the basketball court. They won't let me play. Malik glanced across the parking lot. Older kids, teenagers, laughing, ignoring him. He sat down beside Terrence. For a few moments, neither spoke. Then Malik picked up a small rock and tossed it gently across the pavement. When I was your age, nobody let me play either. Terrence looked surprised. Really? Really? What did you do? Malik smiled. I got better than all of them. The boy laughed. A small laugh. But real. A few minutes later, he wasn't crying anymore. When Malik finally returned upstairs, Denise was watching through the window. She had seen everything. The groceries, the conversation with Terrence, all of it. She smiled. The tired kind, the proud kind, the kind only mothers have. That night, long after Ava had fallen asleep, Malik sat alone at the kitchen table. The apartment was dark except for a small lamp. His acceptance letters rested nearby. 3 different futures, 3 different dreams, all out of reach. For now. He stared at them for a long time, wondering what life might have looked like, wondering who he might have become. Then he folded the thoughts away. Morning would come soon. Work would come soon. Reality would come soon. Before heading to bed, he checked the money in his wallet. A few crumpled bills, a handful of coins. Not much. Tomorrow he needed to pick up Ava's prescription refill. After that, there would be almost nothing left. He slipped the wallet back into his pocket, turned off the lamp, and headed toward his room. Outside, Atlanta glowed beneath the summer night. Thousands of people chasing dreams. Thousands of people carrying burdens. Malik Carter was just one among them. A boy most of the world overlooked. A boy trying to hold his family together. A boy who had no idea that less than 24 hours later, he would meet a stranded old man on a lonely highway. And that one choice, one simple act of kindness, would change everything. The next afternoon arrived wrapped in heat. Not ordinary summer heat. The kind that seemed alive. The kind that rose from the pavement in shimmering waves and pressed against your skin like a hot hand. By 3 o'clock, Atlanta felt as if it had been left beneath a giant glass dome. The air barely moved. Even the trees looked tired. Malik stepped out of the pharmacy and glanced at the small paper bag in his hand. Inside was Ava's inhaler refill. The pharmacist had given him a sympathetic smile when he counted out his money. Malik hated that smile. Not because it was cruel, because it reminded him how close they always lived to the edge. One unexpected bill, one missed paycheck, one emergency, and everything could fall apart. He slipped the bag carefully into his backpack, then checked his wallet. $3 and some change. That was all. Enough for nothing. Enough for survival. He zipped the wallet shut and started walking. The road home stretched ahead beneath the blazing afternoon sun. Traffic moved steadily, people rushing somewhere, people with appointments, people with homes waiting, people with lives that probably felt much easier than his. Malik adjusted his backpack and kept moving. Half a mile later, he passed a bus stop. A young mother sat there with two small children. One of the kids dropped a stuffed bear. Before she noticed, the toy rolled into the grass beside the road. Malik picked it up and handed it back. The little girl smiled. A huge smile. The kind children gave freely. "Thank you. You're welcome." The mother nodded gratefully. A tiny moment. Nothing important. Yet somehow it made the day feel lighter. For a few seconds, anyway. Then the heat returned. The long walk continued. The road eventually left the city behind. Buildings became fewer. Trees became thicker. Traffic moved faster. The shoulder narrowed until it was little more than gravel and red Georgia dirt. Malik could already feel sweat soaking through his shirt. The backpack felt heavier with every step. He was thinking about dinner, thinking about Ava, thinking about whether Mrs. Jenkins had actually remembered the pie. When something caught his eye. A dark-colored Cadillac sat on the side of the road. Its hood was raised. The driver's door hung open. At first he kept walking. People broke down all the time. Someone would help. That was what he assumed. Then he noticed the man, an elderly white man, alone, slumped awkwardly against the driver's seat. His posture immediately felt wrong. Not resting. Not waiting. Something else. Malik slowed. A pickup truck sped past. The driver looked directly at the stranded car, then kept going. Another SUV followed. Same thing. A glance, then gone. The old man never moved. Malik stopped completely. The memory remained vivid. The way the afternoon sunlight reflected off the Cadillac. The way the heat distorted everything. The way the old man seemed smaller than he should have looked. Like the world had forgotten him. For several seconds, Malik stood frozen. His practical side told him to keep walking. Home was still far away. His mother would worry. Ava needed the medicine. He had responsibilities. He wasn't some hero, just a tired teenager trying to survive. Then he saw the old man's hand tremble. Just slightly, but enough. Malik sighed. "Come on." He changed direction. Gravel crunched beneath his shoes. The closer he got, the worse the situation appeared. The man's face was flushed red. Sweat soaked through his shirt. His breathing looked shallow. One leg stretched awkwardly forward. A medical brace wrapped around the knee. The old man opened his eyes when Malik approached. Confusion flickered across his features. Then surprise, as if he genuinely hadn't expected anyone to stop. "Sir?" The old man blinked. "Oh." His voice sounded rough. "Hello, you okay?" The old man laughed weakly. A dry sound. "I've definitely been better." Malik crouched beside him. "What happened?" The old man pointed toward the engine. "Ran out of gas." His lips cracked slightly when he spoke. "My own fault." He attempted another smile. "It wasn't exactly my smartest day." Malik glanced at the empty highway. "No phone? Dead." The old man pulled a useless device from his pocket. "No charger? No roadside assistance?" Another weak laugh. "Not unless they can hear telepathy." Despite himself, Malik smiled. The old man seemed nice, tired, exhausted, but nice. "How long have you been here?" The answer surprised him. "About an hour." Malik looked at the traffic. "An hour?" The old man followed his gaze. "A lot of people saw me." The sadness in his voice felt heavier than the heat. Nobody stopped. Something about that bothered Malik, deeply. Maybe because he understood the feeling. Maybe because he had experienced it himself. being seen, yet somehow invisible. The old man rubbed his forehead. The nearest gas station is 3 miles south. Malik looked down the road. 3 miles, then back at the Cadillac. 6 miles round trip. The old man seemed to know exactly what he was thinking. Too far. His voice was gentle. You've already stopped. Malik didn't answer. Instead, he opened his backpack. Inside sat the only bottle of water he had purchased earlier. He had planned to save it for the walk home. Now he handed it over. The old man hesitated. No. Take it. You need it. Malik shrugged. You need it more. For a moment, neither moved. Then the old man Habaths accepted the bottle. His hands shook noticeably. The sight made Malik more concerned than before. The man drank carefully, slowly, as though every swallow mattered. When he finished, he looked genuinely emotional. Thank you. No problem. The old man stared at him, really stared. Not at his clothes, not at his skin. At him. What did you say your name was? Malik. Malik. The old man nodded thoughtfully. I'm Charles. They shook hands. Charles's grip felt weak, but sincere. For a few moments they sat in silence. Cars rushed by. The sun continued burning overhead. Finally, Charles noticed the pharmacy bag sticking from Malik's backpack. You heading home? Yeah. Charles pointed toward the bag. Medicine? My little sister. She sick? Asthma. Charles nodded slowly. His expression softened. I hope she's okay. She will be. The old man smiled, then looked away, as if thinking about something. Perhaps someone. The silence stretched. Eventually, Charles spoke again. You should go, Malik frowned. What? You already helped. Charles lifted the empty water bottle. This mattered. He looked genuinely grateful. But your family comes first. Malik glanced toward the road, toward home, toward responsibility, toward common sense. Then he looked back at Charles. The man was trying to sound strong, trying to act fine. But Malik could see the truth. The trembling hands, the flushed face, the exhaustion. Charles wasn't okay, and deep down, they both knew it. You don't owe me anything, Charles said quietly. Malik looked at the older man for a long moment, then toward the highway, then toward the distant horizon. 3 miles. The number felt enormous. His body already ached. His wallet was nearly empty. His future uncertain. Yet somehow the decision felt simple. The same way helping Mrs. Rodriguez had felt simple. The same way helping Terrence had felt simple. The same way his mother always made it sound. Do the right thing, then keep moving. Malik stood. Charles looked alarmed. What are you doing? Going to get gas. No. Charles shook his head immediately. You can't walk 6 miles in this heat. Sure I can. Malik. The old man sounded almost desperate. You don't know me. Malik smiled slightly. Nope. You don't owe me a thing. Probably true. Charles stared at him, waiting. Malik adjusted the backpack on his shoulders, then pointed down the road. You need gas. He tapped his own chest. I got 2 legs. A small grin appeared. Sounds like we both got what we need. For the first time all afternoon, Charles looked completely speechless. A strange expression crossed his face. Disbelief, respect, gratitude. Maybe all 3. Malik started walking, The heat hit him immediately. The road stretched endlessly ahead. Behind him, Charles called out one final time, "Malik." The teenager turned. The old man sat beside the Cadillac, staring at him. There was something unusual in his eyes now, something thoughtful, something unforgettable. "Be careful." Malik nodded. "You too." Then he turned back toward the road, toward 3 miles of blazing pavement, toward a decision that already felt bigger than either of them understood. And behind him, Charles Bennett watched the teenager disappear into the shimmering heat, still unable to shake the feeling that he had just met someone extraordinary. Malik didn't look back again. If he did, he might start thinking about how far 3 miles really was. 3 miles under a Georgia summer sun. 3 miles with almost no money in his pocket. 3 miles carrying responsibilities that felt heavier than any backpack. So he kept moving. The first few hundred yards weren't bad. The adrenaline helped. His legs were still fresh. The road stretched ahead in a straight line, disappearing into waves of heat that danced above the pavement. Cars rushed past every few seconds. Most drivers never noticed him. The few who did looked away quickly. Malik was used to that. People saw a black teenager walking alone near the edge of a wealthy suburban district and immediately made assumptions. He had lived with assumptions his entire life. The assumption that he wasn't smart. The assumption that he was dangerous. The assumption that he belonged somewhere else. The assumption that he would never amount to much. At 17, he could recognize those looks instantly, and he hated how normal they had become. A mile passed. The heat grew worse. Sweat rolled down his neck and soaked the collar of his shirt. His shoes kicked up small clouds of red dust with every step. The shoulder narrowed until there was barely enough room between him and the speeding traffic. A horn suddenly blasted. Malik flinched. A lifted pickup truck rolled past. 3 young men sat inside. One leaned out the passenger window. "Hey!" The truck slowed slightly. The young man laughed. "You running from somebody?" The others burst into laughter. Malik kept walking. He didn't answer. Experience had taught him something important. Most people weren't looking for a conversation. They were looking for a reaction. The truck continued beside him for several seconds. "Where you headed, man?" More laughter. Then the driver accelerated. The truck disappeared down the road. Their voices faded into the distance. Malik kept walking. His jaw tightened. Not because their words hurt, because they didn't surprise him. And that was somehow worse. He remembered something Denise once told him. People reveal themselves by how they treat those who can do nothing for them. The memory calmed him. A little. Enough to keep moving. The sun hung directly overhead. The asphalt seemed to glow. Heat rose from the road and wrapped around him from every direction. His throat felt dry. Normally he would have taken a sip from his water bottle, except he no longer had one. Charles had it, and somehow Malik didn't regret that. Another quarter-mile passed. Then something unexpected happened. A police cruiser appeared behind him. Its tires crunched against the gravel shoulder. The vehicle slowed. Malik immediately felt his stomach tighten. The cruiser matched his pace. The driver's window lowered. A white officer in mirrored sunglasses looked at him. "Afternoon." "Afternoon, sir." The officer glanced toward the road ahead, then back at Malik. "You live around here?" "Not exactly." "What are you doing out here?" The question sounded simple, but Malik recognized the suspicion beneath it. He had heard it before, many times. "I'm walking to a gas station." The officer studied him. "For what?" "There's an older man stranded a few miles back." The officer remained silent. His car ran out of gas. still silent. Malik felt the weight of the stare, the kind that searched for inconsistencies, the kind that expected to find them. Finally, the officer nodded toward the backpack. "What's in there?" "Medicine for my little sister. Mind showing me?" Malik slowly removed the pharmacy bag. The officer examined it. The label, the receipt, the inhaler box. Everything looked exactly as Malik said, because it was. Several long seconds passed. Then the officer handed it back. "You helping some old guy?" "Yes, sir." The officer leaned back slightly. Something in his expression shifted. "Not completely, but enough." 3 miles? That's what he said. The officer glanced toward the road, then toward the blazing afternoon sun. "You know that's a long walk." "Yes, sir." The officer looked at him for another moment, then sighed. "Well," he paused. "You better get moving." Malik nodded. "Yes, sir." The cruiser pulled away. Within seconds, it vanished into traffic. Malik stood still for a moment, his heart still beating faster than normal. Not because the officer had been rude. He hadn't. Not exactly. But because Malik understood something the officer probably never would. When people constantly questioned your intentions, you eventually started feeling guilty even when you had done nothing wrong. He shook the thought away. There wasn't time. Charles was still waiting. The second mile felt longer, much longer. The heat had moved beyond uncomfortable. Now it felt personal. The sun pressed down like a weight. Every step seemed to require more effort than the last. His shirt clung to his skin. His mouth felt dry. His shoulders ached. Yet he continued. 1 foot, then the other, then another. He thought about Ava, about the inhaler in his backpack, about her small smile whenever she could breathe easily again. He thought about Denise, about the bills on the kitchen table, about the promise he had made. Don't let the world make you hard. That promise mattered now, more than ever. Because bitterness would have been easier, much easier. It would have been easy to walk past Charles, easy to convince himself somebody else would help, easy to decide his own problems mattered more. Maybe they did, but he couldn't do it. Not after seeing that old man sitting there alone. Not after watching dozens of people ignore him. The gas station finally appeared in the distance. A small building beneath a faded red canopy. Its neon sign flickered weakly despite the daylight. The sight filled Malik with relief. He picked up his pace. Not much, just enough. As he approached the station, he could almost feel hope returning. The hard part was over, or so he thought, because waiting inside was a problem he hadn't seen coming, and it was about to test him in a completely different way. Malik pushed open the station door. Cool air spilled across his face. For a brief moment, it felt like heaven. He had no idea that within the next few minutes, he would discover he was short on money, and that one stranger inside the station would soon make a decision that changed everything. The cool air inside the gas station washed over Malik like a blessing. For 3 seconds, he simply stood there, breathing, letting his body cool, letting his heartbeat settle. The station wasn't much to look at. A few dusty shelves, a humming refrigerator lined with sodas, old lottery advertisements taped to the windows. The smell of coffee, gasoline, and floor cleaner mixed together beneath fluorescent lights that buzzed overhead. 3 customers stood near the counter. A truck driver buying cigarettes, a woman carrying a gallon of milk, an older man in a faded military cap quietly sipping coffee near the window. Nobody paid much attention to Malik, at least not at first. He walked toward the back of the store where several red gas cans hung on a display rack. The cheapest one cost more than he hoped. His stomach tightened. Still, there wasn't another option. He grabbed the smallest can available and carried it toward the counter. The cashier looked up, middle-aged, heavy-set. Name tag that read, Don. What can I get you? Need this can. Don scanned it. The register beeped. Malik glanced at the total. His stomach sank immediately. The can alone cost more than expected, and he still needed gasoline. You filling it today? Yes, sir. Don nodded. Pump 3. Malik carried the can outside. The heat hit him again, like an oven door opening. He forced himself toward the pump, inserted the nozzle, watched the numbers climb. 1 gallon. Exactly 1 gallon. Enough to get Charles somewhere safe. The pump clicked. Finished. Malik stared at the amount, then took a slow breath. Maybe. Just maybe. He still had enough. He returned inside, placed the can on the floor beside the register. Don entered the fuel charge. The total appeared. Malik immediately knew something was wrong. His heart dropped. Slowly, he pulled the crumpled bills from his pocket. Then the coins. He counted once, twice, 3 times. The total never changed. He was short. Exactly $2. $2. After everything. After nearly 3 miles in brutal heat. After giving away his water. After promising Charles he would come back. $2 stood between him and keeping his word. Don stared at the money, then at Malik. You don't have enough, I know. The words barely came out. Malik looked down at the counter. His mind raced. Maybe he had missed something. Maybe another coin remained hidden somewhere. He checked every pocket. Nothing. Not a penny. The customers behind him began shifting impatiently. The woman with the milk sighed. The truck driver checked his watch. Nobody said anything. But Malik could feel the pressure building. The embarrassment. The helplessness. The frustration. All of it. He hated this feeling. Hated standing there counting coins while strangers watched. Hated knowing $2 felt like a fortune when you didn't have it. Don folded his arms. You got a card? No, sir. Somebody you can call? Malik almost laughed. Call who? His mother already struggled to keep the lights on. There was nobody. No backup plan. No emergency account. No safety net. Just him. The silence stretched. The line behind him grew longer. Finally, Don reached for the gas can. I'll have to take it back. The words landed harder than Malik expected, because suddenly he saw Charles sitting alone beneath that blazing sun, waiting, trusting him, believing he would return. Malik looked up. Please. Don paused. The entire store seemed to quiet. There's an older man stranded 3 miles north. The cashier remained silent. Malik continued. His car ran out of gas. Still silent. He's been sitting there for over an hour. The woman with the milk stopped checking her phone. The truck driver looked over. Even the older man by the window turned slightly. Malik swallowed. He can barely walk. Don studied him. The exhaustion, the sweat, the dust covering his clothes, the pharmacy bag sticking from his backpack. For a moment it looked like he might reconsider. Then he shook his head. I'm sorry, kid. Malik lowered his eyes. Of course. Why would anyone believe him? Why would they? He was just another teenager standing at a counter without enough money. The old familiar disappointment settled into his chest, the same feeling he'd experienced 100 times, when opportunities disappeared, when bills arrived, when people looked at him and saw limitations instead of possibilities. Slowly, he gathered his money, prepared to leave, prepared to figure something else out, even though he had no idea what. Then a voice spoke from behind him. "How much is he short?" The room turned. The older man near the window stood up. The military cap shaded weathered eyes. Years seemed etched into every line on his face. Don glanced at the register. $2. The older man nodded once, just once, then reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded bill, and placed it on the counter. "That cover it?" Malik stared. Don stared. The old man shrugged. A man trying to help somebody shouldn't get stopped over $2. For a moment, nobody moved. The words seemed to hang in the air. Simple, honest, powerful. Malik felt something tighten in his throat. "Sir, I can't." "Sure you can." The old man smiled. A tired smile. The kind carried by people who had lived long enough to understand what mattered. "Finish what you started." Malik looked at the bill, then at the stranger. "Thank you." The old man nodded. "No need." "But." "No need." His eyes softened. "I spent 22 years in the army." He glanced toward the window, toward the road beyond. "I learned a long time ago that good people are rare." Then he pointed toward the gas can. "Would be a shame to leave one stranded." Something about those words hit Malik harder than expected. Maybe because nobody called him a good person very often. Not strangers. Not people who had just met him. The old man extended a hand. "Frank." Malik shook it. "Malik." Frank smiled. "Go help your friend, Malik." Friend. The word felt strange. Charles wasn't his friend. Not yet. Maybe never. Just an old man beside a broken Cadillac, and yet somehow the word felt right. Because friends showed up. Friends came back. Friends didn't leave people behind. Don completed the transaction. The register beeped, the receipt printed, and suddenly the obstacle was gone. Malik picked up the gas can. Immediately he felt the weight. Much heavier now. Much hotter. The handle bit into his palm. Frank noticed. "Long walk?" 3 miles. The older veteran whistled softly. "Then you'd better get moving." Malik nodded. Before leaving, he looked back one last time. "Thank you." Frank lifted his coffee cup slightly. "Someday, help somebody else." Malik smiled. "I will." Then he pushed through the station door. The heat slammed into him once more. Brutal. Unforgiving. But somehow it felt different now. Because he wasn't walking alone anymore. Not really. A stranger had stepped forward. A stranger had chosen kindness. And suddenly the road ahead didn't seem quite so impossible. Malik adjusted his grip on the gas can, then started walking north, back toward Charles Bennett, back toward the lonely Cadillac, back toward the promise he intended to keep. He didn't know it yet. But somewhere behind him, Frank watched through the station window, smiling quietly. And ahead of him, Charles Bennett was beginning to wonder if the teenager would actually come back. Because most people wouldn't. Most people couldn't. But Charles was about to discover that Malik Carter was not like most people. The first half-mile back felt manageable. Not easy, just manageable. Malik shifted the gas can from one hand to the other and continued walking north. The metal handle dug into his palm. The gasoline sloshed softly inside with every step. The afternoon sun had begun its slow descent, but the heat remained brutal. The road stretched endlessly ahead, flat, bright, merciless. The gas can seemed to gain weight every few minutes. At first, Malik told himself it was his imagination. By the second mile, he knew it wasn't. His shoulders ached. His arms burned. Sweat dripped from his forehead and stung his eyes. The backpack felt heavier. The inhaler for Ava seemed to pull against his shoulders like a reminder. Everything in his life depended on him getting home. Yet he kept walking away from home, toward a stranger, toward a promise. The irony wasn't lost on him. A semi-truck thundered past. The blast of wind nearly pushed him sideways. He stumbled but recovered quickly. The gas can swung violently. A small amount splashed inside. The smell of fuel filled the air. Malik tightened his grip. His hand already hurt. Red marks had formed where the metal handle pressed into his skin. He switched hands again. The relief lasted about 30 seconds. Then the other hand started hurting too. By then, the road had become strangely quiet. Traffic was lighter. The shadows longer. The sky carried hints of gold near the horizon. Even so, the heat remained trapped in the asphalt. Every step released another wave. Every breath felt dry. Every muscle complained. For the first time since leaving the station, doubt appeared. A small voice, quiet, persistent. You could have gone home. The thought arrived unexpectedly. You did enough already. Nobody would blame you. Nobody even knows you're here. Malik hated that voice, because it sounded reasonable. That made it dangerous. He kept walking. The voice continued. Charles isn't family. You don't owe him anything. Maybe somebody else stopped by now. Maybe another driver helped. Maybe the old man already left. Malik slowed slightly. The possibility crossed his mind. What if Charles wasn't there anymore? What if someone else had arrived? What if this entire trip had become pointless? The questions swirled around him. Then another memory surfaced. His mother's face. The night before. Don't let pain decide who you become. The words arrived with startling clarity. Malik lowered his head and kept moving. One step. Then another. Promises mattered, especially when keeping them was difficult. A gentle breeze appeared. Not much. Just enough to move the grass beside the road. Dark clouds had begun gathering far to the west. Summer clouds. Heavy, gray, pregnant with rain. The sight should have been encouraging. Instead, it worried him. Rain meant slippery roads. Rain meant visibility problems. Rain meant Charles sitting exposed beside a disabled vehicle. Malik increased his pace. The gas can felt heavier than ever. A mile later, his body began reaching its limits. His shirt was soaked. His throat burned. His legs felt stiff. The heat and exhaustion had started working together. Each step required more effort. The road blurred slightly. Not enough to be dangerous. Enough to be concerning. He stopped briefly. Just 30 seconds. Nothing more. The gas can touched the ground. Malik placed both hands on his knees. His breathing deepened. The world tilted slightly, then settled. He closed his eyes, counted to 10, opened them again. The road remained. The Cadillac remained somewhere ahead. The promise remained. So he picked up the can again and continued. The clouds moved closer. Thunder rolled somewhere far away. Not loud. Not yet. Just a distant warning, as if the sky itself were watching. Malik rounded a gentle curve and suddenly stopped. A familiar shape sat in the distance, dark, motionless. The Cadillac. Even from far away, he recognized it. Relief flooded through him. Charles was still there. The car remained exactly where he'd left it. The old man hadn't given up. For some reason, that mattered. A lot. Malik continued forward. The remaining distance felt shorter. Not physically, emotionally. The destination finally existed. The end was visible. Halfway there, he could make out details. The raised hood, the open driver's door, a figure sitting beside the vehicle. Waiting. Charles. The old man seemed smaller now, more fragile. The longer Malik looked, the more concerned he became. Charles hadn't moved much. That wasn't a good sign. Another 100 yards. Then another. The Cadillac grew larger. Charles noticed movement. The old man slowly looked up. For several seconds he simply stared, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. Then he stood. Slowly, carefully. One hand gripping the doorframe, his injured knee clearly protesting. Malik kept walking. Charles continued staring. The expression on his face changed. First surprise, then disbelief, then something deeper, something emotional. The old man took a few cautious steps forward. Malik? The teenager smiled weakly. Told you I'd be back. For a moment, neither spoke. The late afternoon sunlight painted everything gold. The road, the dust, the Cadillac, even the exhausted teenager carrying a gas can. Charles looked overwhelmed, genuinely overwhelmed. I didn't think. His voice broke slightly. He stopped, tried again. I wasn't sure. Malik understood immediately. Not because Charles explained, because life had taught him what disappointment looked like. The old man hadn't expected anyone to come back. Not really. Maybe he hoped. Maybe he wanted to believe. But experience had clearly taught him otherwise. Malik set the gas can down. The relief was immediate. His arms felt strangely weightless. Charles stared at the container, then back at Malik. You walked all the way there. Yep, and all the way back. That's usually how round trips work. For the first time all afternoon, Charles laughed. A real laugh. Not forced, not polite. Real. The sound surprised both of them. Then Charles noticed the condition Malik was in. The soaked shirt, the dusty shoes, the red marks on his hands. The exhaustion. His smile faded. You carried that the entire way. Malik shrugged. Somebody had to. The old man's eyes glistened briefly. He looked away before Malik could fully notice. Then he cleared his throat. Let's get this thing running. Together they opened the fuel cap. Malik carefully poured the gasoline inside. Every drop mattered. The scent of fuel drifted into the warm air. Charles watched silently. When the can was empty, Malik stepped back. The moment of truth had arrived. Charles slid into the driver's seat. His hand rested on the ignition. For a second, he simply sat there. Then he turned the key. The engine coughed. Once. Twice. Malik held his breath. The Cadillac sputtered, then roared to life. Both men smiled immediately. The sound felt almost miraculous. Charles leaned back against the seat. Relief washed across his face. Not relief about the car. Relief about something else. Something larger. Maybe relief that good people still existed. Maybe relief that his faith in others hadn't completely disappeared. Maybe both. Outside, thunder rolled again. Closer now. The first drops of rain began tapping softly against the windshield. Charles switched off the engine and stepped out once more. He looked directly at Malik. The teenager suddenly realized the old man was studying him, not casually, carefully, like someone trying to remember every detail, every word, every expression, and for the first time, Malik sensed that whatever happened next would matter far more than either of them expected. Because Charles Bennett was about to make an offer, and Malik Carter was about to face a choice that would reveal exactly who he was. The rain began as a light drizzle. Tiny drops tapped against the Cadillac's hood. The heat of the day still lingered in the air, creating a strange mixture of warmth and moisture that wrapped around everything. Malik wiped sweat from his forehead. His arms still trembled from carrying the gas can. His legs felt heavy. The walk had taken more out of him than he wanted to admit. Charles noticed. Of course he noticed. The old man seemed to notice everything. For a moment, neither spoke. The engine idled quietly, the first real sign that the crisis had passed. Charles looked toward the road, then toward Malik, then back again, as if organizing his thoughts. Finally, he reached into his back pocket, pulled out a thick leather wallet, the kind Malik rarely saw in real life. Charles opened it. Several crisp bills sat inside. Without hesitation, he removed one, then another, then several more. Before long, a stack of cash rested in his hand. Malik's eyes widened, not because he wanted the money, because there was so much of it. Charles extended the bills. Here. Malik stared. $500. 500. For a second, his brain struggled to process the number. $500 could cover rent. $500 could buy groceries. $500 could pay for Ava's medication for months. $500 could fix problems that currently felt impossible. The rain continued falling softly. Charles kept holding the money out. You earned it. Malik didn't move. His eyes remained locked on the bills. And for the first time all afternoon, temptation arrived. Real temptation. Not the small kind, the serious kind, the kind that whispered solutions. Take it. Nobody would blame you. You need it. Your family needs it. The voice sounded reasonable, painfully reasonable. $500. He imagined Denise opening the electric bill without fear. He imagined Ava receiving every medication she needed. He imagined a refrigerator full of food. He imagined sleeping through an entire night without worrying about money. His hand almost moved. Almost. Then another memory surfaced. His mother sitting at the kitchen table. The bills. The tears she tried to hide. The lesson she repeated throughout his life. Don't let pain decide who you become. Malik slowly looked up. Charles watched him carefully, waiting. Not pressuring, just watching. The rain grew heavier. A distant flash of lightning illuminated the horizon. Finally, Malik took a step backward. The old man frowned slightly. No, sir. Charles blinked. What? Malik shook his head. I can't. The old man glanced at the money, then back at him. Malik, you just walked 6 miles. No, sir. You carried fuel through this heat. I know. You spent your own money, I know. Charles looked genuinely confused. Then why won't you take it? The answer came easily. Because it was true. I didn't help you for money. The words settled into the space between them. Simple, honest, uncomfortable. Charles stared. For several long seconds he said nothing. Rain tapped steadily against the car. The world seemed to quiet around them, almost as if everything was waiting. Then Charles lowered his hand. Slowly. The money remained untouched. Something changed in his expression. Not disappointment, not frustration. Something deeper. Respect. Real respect. The kind earned rather than given. You know, Charles said softly, most people would take it. Probably, most people should take it. Malik laughed lightly. Maybe. Charles studied him. Your family could use this money. The statement wasn't a question. Somehow Charles already knew. Malik smiled sadly. Yeah. The old man looked toward the wet pavement, then back at Malik. The teenager's shoes were falling apart. His shirt was soaked. His hands carried fresh red marks from the gas can. Everything about him suggested struggle, yet he still refused. Charles slowly folded the money, returned it to the wallet, then closed it. Not because he wanted to, because he understood. You really mean that? Malik nodded. Yes, sir. The old man smiled faintly, almost to himself, as though confirming something, as though finding evidence for a belief he had nearly abandoned. For a few moments, the rain became the only sound. Then Charles asked another question, one that felt strangely important. What's your full name? Malik hesitated, not out of fear, out of curiosity. The question seemed unusual. Still, he answered. Malik Carter. Charles repeated it. Slowly. Carefully. Malik Carter. Then he nodded, like he intended to remember it forever. And where do you live? Now Malik paused longer. His mother had always taught him to be careful, especially with strangers, even kind strangers. Charles seemed to understand the hesitation. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Something in his voice felt sincere, trustworthy. The old man had never pressured him, never manipulated him, never acted entitled. Eventually, Malik answered. South Atlanta. Charles nodded. Where exactly? The Oakwood Apartments, the complex near Jefferson Avenue? Malik looked surprised. Yeah. Charles smiled slightly. I know it. The rain continued falling. Charles reached into the glove compartment, removed a small notebook. Old-fashioned. Leather-bound. He opened it, wrote something down, then closed it. Malik watched. A strange feeling settled in his chest, as though something important had just happened, even though he didn't understand what. Charles slipped the notebook away, then extended his hand. For the second time that day, Malik shook it. This time the grip felt stronger, steadier. Not because Charles had recovered physically, because something inside him had changed. Thank you, Malik. The words sounded different now. Heavier, more meaningful. You don't have to thank me. I do. Charles smiled. You reminded me of something. What? The old man looked toward the rain-covered road, toward the cars rushing past, toward the world. That good people still exist. Malik wasn't sure how to respond, so he simply smiled. The two stood quietly for another moment. Then Charles glanced at the darkening sky. You should get home. My mom probably agrees. That earned another laugh, a real one. Charles opened the driver's door, then paused. One more thing. Malik stopped. Yes, sir? The old man's eyes met his. Steady, thoughtful, almost emotional. Never let anyone convince you that what you did today doesn't matter. The words landed harder than either of them expected, because deep down, Malik often wondered exactly that. Whether kindness mattered, whether doing the right thing mattered, whether any of it changed anything. Charles seemed to read the question in his face. It matters. Then he climbed into the Cadillac. The engine started smoothly. The headlights illuminated the rain. For a moment the old man sat there, looking through the open window, looking directly at Malik, almost as if memorizing him. Then he nodded once and drove away. The Cadillac disappeared into the rain. Malik stood alone beside the road, watching the taillights shrink into the distance. Eventually, they vanished completely. Only then did he start walking home. He didn't know it yet, but somewhere inside that departing Cadillac sat a man who could change lives with a single phone call. And before the night was over, Charles Bennett would make one. A phone call that would send lawyers, assistants, and black SUVs toward South Atlanta before sunrise. A phone call that would change the future of Malik Carter forever. But Malik knew nothing about that. As far as he was concerned, the day was finally over. The rain followed him most of the way home. Not a storm, just a steady summer shower that cooled the air and darkened the streets. The city lights reflected in puddles along the sidewalks. Traffic hissed across wet pavement. Neon signs glowed softly through the mist. By the time Malik reached South Atlanta, the sky had turned almost completely dark. His body felt exhausted. Every muscle hurt. The walk to the gas station. The walk back. The heat. The weight of the fuel can. The stress. It had all collected inside him. Yet beneath the exhaustion sat something else. A strange peace. The kind that appeared after doing something you knew was right, even if nobody else ever found out. He climbed the stairs to the apartment building. The hallway lights flickered as usual. A television played loudly behind one door. Someone laughed behind another. The familiar sounds of home surrounded him. For the first time all day, he smiled. Apartment 3B. He unlocked the door. Immediately he heard his mother's voice. "Malik?" The concern was obvious. She appeared in the hallway seconds later. The moment she saw him, her expression changed. Relief, then confusion, then alarm. His clothes were soaked. His shoes were covered in red dirt. His hair dripped rainwater. And his hands looked terrible. What happened? Before Malik could answer, Ava appeared behind Denise. Her eyes widened. "Whoa!" Malik laughed softly. "Good to see you too. You look like you fought a tornado. Just a long day." Denise stepped closer. Mothers had a way of seeing things other people missed. She noticed the red marks on his palms, the exhaustion in his eyes, the way he slightly favored one leg, and immediately knew something important had happened. What happened? This time the question was quieter, more serious. Malik placed his backpack on the kitchen table, carefully removed the pharmacy bag, then handed it to Ava. Her face immediately lit up. "My inhaler! Fresh refill!" Ava hugged it dramatically. "You're my favorite person. You say that every week, because you're consistently my favorite." The comment earned a smile from Denise, a small one, but real. Then her attention returned to Malik. The questions remained, so he told them. Everything. The broken Cadillac, the old man, the dead phone, the heat, the 3-mile walk, the gas station, the missing $2, Frank, the trip back, the gasoline, the rain, the $500, the refusal. By the time he finished, the apartment had become completely silent. Ava stared at him, wide-eyed. "You turned down $500? Malik laughed. "Apparently." Ava looked personally offended. "Are you okay?" Even Denise smiled at that. Then the smile faded. Slowly, thoughtfully. She moved closer, reached up, placed both hands on her son's face, exactly as she had done when he was little, when he had nightmares, when he got sick, when life became too heavy. For a few moments she simply looked at him. Then tears appeared. Not dramatic tears, not loud tears. The quiet kind, the dangerous kind, the kind that came from somewhere deep. "Mom?" She shook her head. "I'm okay." But she wasn't. Not really. Because what she was feeling wasn't sadness. It was pride. The overwhelming kind. The kind that hurt. The kind that left no words. Finally, she spoke. "Your grandfather would have done the same thing." Malik swallowed. He barely remembered his grandfather. Only fragments, stories, photographs, memories borrowed from other people. But hearing that mattered a lot. Denise smiled through the tears. "You know that?" He nodded. Slowly, yeah. She pulled him into a hug. A real hug. The kind people needed more often than they admitted. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The kitchen felt warm. Safe. Small. Perfect. Eventually, Ava interrupted, as little sisters often do. "Can we eat now?" The tension broke immediately. Everyone laughed. Dinner wasn't fancy. It never was. Beans, rice, a little cornbread. The same inexpensive meal they had eaten countless times before. Yet somehow it tasted better that night. Maybe because they were together. Maybe because the hardest part of the day was over. Maybe because none of them realized how much their lives were about to change. After dinner, Malik finally opened the pie container Mrs. Jenkins had given him. Ava nearly celebrated. They split it 3 ways, each piece small, each bite appreciated. Then came dishes, laundry, the ordinary routines of ordinary people, the beautiful little things that rarely made headlines, the things that actually mattered. By 10 o'clock, Ava was asleep. Denise sat quietly in the living room reading an old library book. Malik stood near the window, looking outside. Rainwater glistened beneath the streetlights. The neighborhood seemed peaceful. For once. He thought about Charles, wondered whether he had reached home safely, wondered what kind of life he lived, wondered why the old man had looked so surprised when Malik returned. Most of all, he wondered why the encounter felt important. Not because of money, not because of reward, because of something else. Something harder to explain. As though their meeting had been meant to happen. The thought felt strange, so he pushed it away. Eventually, he went to bed. The mattress on the floor welcomed him like an old friend. His muscles immediately protested. Every inch of him hurt. His palms burned. His legs ached. His shoulders throbbed. Yet he smiled. Because despite everything, he had kept his promise. The room grew quiet. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. Within minutes, sleep arrived. Deep, instant, complete. He never heard the phone ring 2 hours later. Never saw the lights from an expensive black sedan turning into a gated estate on the opposite side of Atlanta. Never heard the conversation taking place inside a private study lined with books. Charles Bennett sat behind a massive oak desk. His clothes had been changed. His appearance transformed. No longer a stranded traveler. No longer a tired old man beside a broken Cadillac. Now he looked exactly like what he truly was. Powerful, respected, important. A woman in a business suit sat across from him. His attorney. A man stood nearby taking notes. His chief assistant. Both looked confused. Because Charles almost never called meetings this late, especially on a Friday night. Yet here they were, near midnight, listening carefully. Charles placed a small notebook on the desk, opened it, and pointed to a single name. Malik Carter. The room fell silent. His attorney adjusted her glasses. "Who is he?" Charles stared at the name, then smiled. The same smile that had appeared when Malik refused the money. "The young man who reminded me who we are supposed to be." The attorney exchanged a glance with the assistant. Neither understood. Not yet. Charles looked toward the rain beyond the window. His expression grew thoughtful, determined, certain. "Find everything." The attorney blinked. "Everything?" "School records." He nodded. "Family situation." Another nod. "Medical needs." A pause. "Dreams." Now the assistant looked confused. "Dreams?" Charles smiled. "Especially those." The attorney slowly closed her folder. She had worked for Charles Bennett for over 15 years, long enough to recognize that tone. Something significant had happened. Something life-changing. For someone, she simply nodded. "We'll start immediately." Charles leaned back. His eyes drifted once more to the notebook, to the handwritten name. Malik Carter. Then he whispered something neither employee would ever forget. "By this time tomorrow, that boy's life will never be the same." And across the city, asleep on a mattress in a tiny apartment, Malik Carter remained completely unaware that before sunrise, the future would come knocking at his door. Morning arrived quietly. The rain had washed the city clean during the night. Sunlight spilled through the apartment window. The air felt cooler, lighter. For the first time in weeks, Malik slept past 7. His body desperately needed it. The previous day had drained him completely. The walk, the heat, the exhaustion, the emotions, everything. He was deep asleep when the first knock came. 3 sharp taps, then silence. Denise heard it first. She was already awake, standing in the kitchen making coffee. For a moment she ignored it. Most visitors in Oakwood Apartments didn't arrive this early on a Sunday. Then another knock came. This time louder, more deliberate. Denise frowned. Something about it felt different. Professional. Intentional. Not the casual knock of a neighbor. Not maintenance. Not a delivery. She moved toward the window, pulled the curtain aside, and froze. The coffee mug nearly slipped from her hand. 3 black SUVs sat outside the apartment building. Not old ones, not ordinary ones. Luxury vehicles, polished, immaculate. Their dark paint reflected the morning sun. People were already staring. Across the courtyard, curtains shifted. Doors cracked open. Neighbors stepped onto balconies. The entire building seemed to notice at once. Because vehicles like those didn't come to Oakwood Apartments. Not ever. Mrs. Henderson from Unit 2A stood outside in her robe, pretending to water a plant that definitely didn't need water. 2 teenagers sat on the stairs openly staring. An elderly man walking his dog had completely stopped walking. The dog kept moving. The man didn't. Denise felt her stomach tighten. 100 terrible possibilities rushed through her mind. Her eyes moved toward Malik's bedroom, toward her sleeping son. Fear arrived instantly, the kind only mothers understand. She opened the front door before the next knock could come. A tall man stood outside. Dark suit, white shirt, professional posture. Behind him stood a woman carrying a leather portfolio, and several others waiting near the SUVs. None of them looked like police. That should have been reassuring, yet somehow it wasn't. Can I help you? The man's smile was polite. Good morning, ma'am. Who are you? My name is Daniel Foster. He handed her a business card. Denise glanced down. Attorney. The word made her heart beat faster. Attorney? Why would a lawyer be here? Daniel noticed the concern. Are you Denise Carter? The question made things worse. Why? We are looking for Malik Carter. Every protective instinct inside her activated instantly. Her posture changed. Her expression hardened. What did he do? The lawyer blinked. Excuse me? What did my son do? The words came sharp, defensive, ready for battle. Daniel quickly raised a hand. No, ma'am. A small smile appeared. Nothing. Denise wasn't convinced. People didn't arrive with lawyers and luxury vehicles because nothing happened. They arrived because something happened, usually something bad. Behind Daniel, one of the SUV doors opened. A familiar figure stepped out. Denise didn't recognize him immediately. Not at first. The man wore a tailored navy blazer, expensive shoes, perfectly pressed slacks. Everything about him suggested wealth, influence, power. Then he smiled, and suddenly she recognized the eyes. The pale blue eyes, the same eyes Malik had described the night before. The same eyes belonging to the stranded old man beside the Cadillac. Charles Bennett. The realization hit her instantly. Daniel stepped aside. Charles slowly approached the porch. His knee still bothered him slightly, though nowhere near as badly as yesterday. Denise stared, confused, cautious, completely unsure what was happening. Charles stopped several feet away, not wanting to intimidate her. The neighbors watched from every direction. The entire courtyard had become an audience. Nobody even pretended otherwise anymore. Charles removed his sunglasses, then did something unexpected. He extended his hand. Mrs. Carter. Denise hesitated, then shook it. Charles smiled warmly. Your son helped me yesterday. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. Only slightly. Malik hadn't been in trouble. At least not yet. Then Charles said something she never expected. He may have saved my life. The courtyard seemed to grow quieter. Even the neighbors appeared stunned. Denise blinked. What? Charles glanced toward the apartment. May I come in? Several dozen curious eyes remained fixed on them. Denise looked around. The entire neighborhood was watching. Every window, every balcony, every doorway. Word would spread through the building before lunch. She sighed, then stepped aside. Come in. Within moments, Charles, Daniel, and the woman with the portfolio entered the apartment. The door closed behind them. Outside, disappointment swept through the crowd. Everyone wanted answers. Now they would have to wait. Inside, Charles looked around quietly. The apartment was small, clean, modest. The furniture showed its age. The carpet carried years of wear. Nothing luxurious, nothing excessive. Just a family doing its best. His expression softened. Everything he had learned during the night suddenly became real. The reports, the records, the financial struggles, the medical expenses, the missed opportunities. Now he could see them, feel them. A bedroom door opened. Malik appeared, half awake, wearing an old t-shirt, hair a mess. The moment he saw Charles standing in the living room, he stopped completely. For several seconds, neither moved. Neither spoke. Malik honestly wondered if he was still dreaming. Charles smiled. Good morning? Malik blinked. Charles? The old man laughed. Glad you remember me. The teenager looked toward the attorney, the assistant, the expensive suits, then back toward Charles. Confusion spread across his face. The old man no longer looked like a stranded traveler. Now he looked important. Very important. What is going on? Daniel exchanged a glance with Charles. The moment had arrived. Charles gestured toward the couch. Let's sit down. Malik slowly obeyed. Denise sat beside him. Protective. Alert. Ready to defend her son if necessary. The assistant placed the leather portfolio on the coffee table. Charles remained standing. For a moment, he simply looked at Malik, then at Denise. His expression grew serious, thoughtful, respectful. Finally, he spoke. Yesterday, your son walked 6 miles in extreme heat to help a stranger. Denise squeezed Malik's hand. Charles continued. He gave away his water. A pause. He spent his own money. Another pause. He refused $500. The room became completely silent. Then Charles smiled and said the sentence that would soon spread through Oakwood apartments like wildfire. Mrs. Carter, your son rescued a billionaire. Malik stared. Denise stared. Neither spoke. Neither moved. Because surely they had heard him wrong. Surely. But Charles Bennett wasn't joking, and what he was about to reveal next would change everything they thought they knew about the old man beside the broken Cadillac. The apartment fell completely silent. Outside, life continued. Children rode bicycles. Neighbors whispered from balconies. Someone started a lawnmower somewhere across the complex. But inside apartment 3B, the world seemed to stop. Malik stared at Charles. A billionaire? Charles smiled slightly. I know how that sounds. No, Malik said honestly. It sounds crazy. That earned a laugh from everyone except Denise. She was still trying to determine whether this entire situation was real. Charles noticed. He didn't blame her. If someone had shown up at his door claiming something similar, he would have been skeptical too. The attorney opened the leather portfolio. Several documents appeared. Magazine covers, business reports, newspaper articles, photographs. She placed them carefully on the coffee table. Malik leaned forward. So did Denise. The first photograph showed a much younger Charles standing in front of a glass office tower. The second featured him shaking hands with a governor. Another displayed him ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. The final magazine cover carried a headline that made Malik blink twice. The man who built Bennett Global. Charles watched their reactions quietly. No arrogance, no pride, just patience. Finally, Denise spoke. You're really him. Charles nodded. Yes, ma'am. Malik looked back at the photographs, the expensive suits, the corporate buildings, the headlines. Nothing matched the exhausted old man sitting beside a broken Cadillac. None of it. Then what were you doing out there? Charles smiled. That question seemed familiar. I was visiting a property. Alone? Yes. You drive yourself most of the time. Malik frowned. Billionaires drive themselves? Some of us. That answer made Ava giggle. Charles smiled at her. Then his expression grew serious again. He looked directly at Malik. I owe you the truth. The room immediately focused on him. Charles folded his hands, took a breath, and began. 38 years ago, I started Bennett Global in a one-room office with 2 employees. He smiled softly. The air conditioner barely worked. Ava nodded seriously. That's bad. Everyone laughed. Charles continued. For years, I worked 7 days a week. His eyes drifted briefly toward the window, toward old memories. I became successful. A pause. Then very successful. Another pause. And eventually, wealth stopped meaning much. Malik listened carefully. Something told him this part mattered. Charles continued. The older I got, the more interested I became in people. That surprised Malik. People? Character. Charles nodded. The kind of person someone becomes when nobody is watching. The words felt familiar, almost personal. Charles noticed. Most scholarships reward grades. He leaned forward. Most awards reward achievements. Another pause. I became interested in something different. Now even Denise seemed curious. Charles smiled. I started funding educational programs. Malik nodded. That part made sense. Successful people often donated money. Charles, however, wasn't finished. Eventually, I noticed something troubling. His expression darkened. Many of the most deserving young people never received opportunities. The room grew quiet. Charles looked directly at Malik. Not because they lacked talent. A pause. Because nobody noticed them. Those words landed heavily. Very heavily. Because Malik knew exactly what that felt like. Charles saw the recognition immediately. The world is full of people who get overlooked. His voice softened. People carrying burdens nobody sees. Denise lowered her eyes. Charles continued. Young people taking care of families. A glance toward Malik. Single parents working 3 jobs. A glance toward Denise. Children growing up in places others ignore. A glance toward the apartment itself. The message was clear. Charles wasn't describing strangers anymore. He was describing them. The room felt smaller, more emotional, more personal. Then Charles reached into his pocket, removed the small notebook, the same notebook he had used beside the Cadillac. He opened it. The handwritten name remained there. Malik Carter. For several seconds he simply looked at it, then closed the notebook again. Yesterday changed something. Malik frowned. What do you mean? Charles smiled. I sat beside that road for over an hour. The memory returned instantly. The heat, the cars, the loneliness. Charles nodded. As vehicle after vehicle passed, his expression became distant, thoughtful. People looked. A pause, then kept driving. Another pause. I don't blame them. The statement surprised everyone. You don't? Charles shook his head. No. He smiled sadly. People have their own problems. The room remained silent. Then Charles looked at Malik. But you stopped. A pause. You gave me water. Another. You spent your own money. Another. You walked 6 miles. His voice lowered. And then you refused $500. The apartment became completely still. Charles leaned forward, his eyes never leaving Malik. Do you know how rare that is? Malik shifted awkwardly. I don't know, I do. Charles nodded slowly. Very. For the first time since arriving, emotion appeared openly in his face. Not pity, not sympathy. Respect. Pure respect. The kind one person earns from another. You were struggling. Charles gestured around the apartment. You still are. No judgment, just truth. And yet your first instinct was to help someone else. The words hit harder than Malik expected. because nobody had ever said them that way before. Nobody had ever framed his choices as something valuable. Most people saw kindness as weakness, naivety, a mistake. Charles seemed to see something entirely different. The old man stood, walked slowly toward the window, looked out across the apartment complex. Children played basketball near a cracked court. Laundry hung from balconies. Life unfolded. Ordinary life. The kind most wealthy people never experienced firsthand. Charles turned back. His eyes settled on Malik once more. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. "I didn't come here to repay a favor." The room froze. Malik frowned. "What?" Charles smiled. "No amount of money properly repays character." The attorney quietly removed another folder from the portfolio. A thicker one. Much thicker. Charles continued, "I came here because the world almost missed someone extraordinary." Denise's eyes immediately filled with tears. Ava looked confused. Malik looked stunned. The old man nodded toward the folder. The attorney placed it in front of him. "Open it." Malik hesitated, then obeyed. Inside sat documents, official-looking papers, letters, forms, photographs. The first page carried a bold heading. Bennett Future Leaders Scholarship. Malik blinked. His heart skipped. Charles watched carefully, then spoke. That folder contained something much larger than a reward. The teenager slowly turned another page, then another. His hands began trembling. Because suddenly he realized the old man hadn't come to thank him. He had come to change his future. And what waited inside that folder was far bigger than anything Malik Carter had ever imagined possible. The room felt suddenly smaller. The sounds outside faded. The whispers from curious neighbors, the distant bounce of a basketball, the hum of traffic beyond the apartment complex. Everything disappeared beneath the pounding of Malik's heart. He looked down at the folder again, then back at Charles, then back at the documents. His hands trembled, not from fear, from disbelief. The first page outlined a 4-year scholarship, full tuition, any accredited university in the country, room and board, books, technology, transportation, even a monthly living stipend. Malik read the page twice, then a third time. The words remained exactly the same. He looked up. This can't be real. Charles smiled gently. It is. Denise pressed both hands against her mouth. Tears immediately appeared. She had spent years watching doors close in front of her son, years watching him sacrifice opportunities, years watching him choose responsibility over dreams. Now one of those doors was opening again, and neither of them knew what to do with that. Malik slowly turned another page, then another. The scholarship details continued. Requirements, support services, mentorship opportunities, everything. His eyes blurred, not because he couldn't read, because emotions were getting in the way. He remembered the acceptance letters, still taped to his bedroom wall. Georgia State, Clark Atlanta, Kennesaw State. 3 dreams frozen in time, 3 opportunities buried beneath reality, 3 reminders of what could have been. Now suddenly, maybe, just maybe, they weren't impossible anymore. Charles watched him quietly, then spoke. You earned every bit of that. Malik shook his head. No, sir. Charles smiled. Yes. The answer came without hesitation, without doubt, without negotiation. The certainty in the old man's voice surprised everyone, even his attorney. Charles leaned forward, Do you know why most people fail to recognize character? Malik looked up. No. Because character rarely announces itself. The room remained silent. Charles continued. It appears in small moments. A pause. When nobody is watching. Another pause. When doing the right thing costs something. His eyes met Malik's. You paid a price yesterday. The teenager swallowed. Charles nodded. You gave away your water. A pause. You spent your money. Another. You risked disappointing your family. Another. You walked 6 miles through brutal heat. His voice softened, and then refused $500. The room became quiet again. Charles smiled. That's character. Nobody spoke, because there wasn't much left to say. The truth sat openly between them. Eventually, Denise wiped her eyes. Then another thought occurred to her. A practical thought. The kind mothers always had. What about Ava? Charles immediately looked toward the little girl. She sat quietly near the kitchen table, still trying to understand why important-looking people had suddenly appeared in her home. Charles smiled, then glanced toward his attorney. The woman handed him another document. He placed it gently on the coffee table. This covers that too. Denise frowned. What? Charles nodded. Ava's medical care. Silence. Complete silence. The words seemed too large, too impossible. He continued. Full coverage. Another pause. Specialists. Another. Treatment plans. Another. Whatever she needs. Denise stared, then stared some more. The years of worry. The prescriptions. The emergency room visits. The sleepless nights. The fear. All of it suddenly rushed to the surface. And finally she broke. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just tears. The kind that arrive when someone has been carrying too much for too long. Malik immediately moved beside her, wrapped an arm around her shoulders, the same way she had protected him his entire life. Now it was his turn. Charles quietly looked away, giving them a moment, giving them dignity. When Denise finally regained her composure, Charles reached into the folder once more. There is something else. Malik almost laughed. Something else? At this point it felt impossible. The old man smiled. I visited your neighborhood this morning. That caught everyone's attention. You did? Charles nodded. I drove around. His expression grew thoughtful. I saw the basketball court. A pause. The abandoned recreation center. Another. The closed tutoring building. Another. The lack of opportunity. The apartment became quiet again, because everyone knew exactly what he meant. The neighborhood had been forgotten, ignored, overlooked. Just like many of the people living there. Charles folded his hands, then delivered the final surprise. My foundation will be funding a new community center. Malik blinked. What? A full facility? Charles nodded. Computers. Another nod. After-school programs. Another. College preparation. Another. Meals. Another. Mentoring. The room seemed frozen. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Charles smiled. It will be built right here. The old man pointed toward the neighborhood outside. Where it's needed. Malik struggled to process everything. Scholarship, medical support, opportunity. Now this. A community center for people like him, for kids growing up exactly as he had. The thought felt overwhelming. Then Charles added one final sentence, the sentence nobody expected, and it will carry your family name. Denise looked confused. What? Charles smiled warmly. The Carter Hope Center. The words landed like thunder. For several seconds, nobody reacted. Not because they didn't care, because they couldn't. The idea felt too large, too beautiful, too impossible. Charles looked directly at Denise. Young men like Malik don't appear by accident. His voice softened. They are raised. Tears filled Denise's eyes again. Charles nodded toward her. The center should honor the family that taught him who he is. The apartment became completely silent. Even Ava seemed emotional now, though she probably couldn't have explained why. Malik stared at the floor, then at the scholarship, then at his mother, then at Charles. Finally he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't help you for any of this. Charles smiled immediately, the biggest smile Malik had seen yet. I know. A pause. That's exactly why you deserve it. The room sat quietly for a long moment. Nobody wanted to break it. Nobody wanted to rush it. Some moments deserved time. Eventually, Charles stood. The meeting had reached its end, but the story hadn't, not even close, because futures don't change in a single morning. They change one day at a time, one decision at a time, one act of kindness at a time. 4 years later, Malik Carter walked across a graduation stage. The crowd erupted. His mother cried. Ava screamed loud enough to embarrass everyone nearby. Malik laughed as he accepted his diploma. Bachelor's degree. Honors. A future once thought impossible. The scholarship had changed his path, but it hadn't changed who he was. That part remained the same. Years later, he stood inside the Carter Hope Center. The building buzzed with life. Children filled computer labs. Students worked with tutors. Families gathered for community dinners. Dreams quietly took root, exactly as Charles had hoped. One evening, Malik paused near the entrance. A young boy sat on a bench nearby, maybe 10 years old. The boy opened a paper lunch bag, pulled out a sandwich, then noticed a homeless man sitting near the sidewalk. Without hesitation, the boy stood, walked over, and handed him half the meal, then returned to the bench. No speech, no audience, no reward. Just kindness. Simple, quiet, real. Malik smiled, because he recognized it immediately. The same choice, the same instinct, the same heart. The boy noticed him watching. Embarrassment crossed his face. I just wanted to help. Malik nodded, then smiled, the same way Charles Bennett had smiled years ago beside a broken Cadillac. Keep that heart. The boy looked curious. Why? Malik glanced toward the center, toward the children, toward the future, then back at him. Because someday, he said softly, it will open a door you can't even see yet. The boy smiled, and somewhere deep inside, Malik thought about a hot summer afternoon, a broken Cadillac, a lonely old man, 3 miles of road, and one decision, a decision that didn't just change his life, it changed an entire community. Because kindness has a strange way of traveling farther than we ever expect. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stop when everyone else keeps driving, and everything changes. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below. When Malik Carter watched that little boy share half his sandwich with a homeless man outside the Carter Hope Center, he realized something powerful. The same kindness that changed his life was already being passed on to someone else. What started with a walk down a burning highway had become a legacy far bigger than one person. This story reminds us that one courageous moment can change the direction of an entire life. Malik didn't know who Charles Bennett was when he chose to help him. He simply did what was right when walking away would have been easier. Today, think about one small act you've been putting off because it seems too insignificant to matter. The next time someone needs help, show up anyway, just like Malik did, before he had any reason to believe it would make a difference. If Malik's story moved you, comment one below. And tell me this: have you ever made a small decision that ended up changing your life in a way you never expected? And stay with me, because the next story begins with another ordinary moment that nobody thought mattered, until everything changed.